Greetings and welcome to another impressions video here at Words About Games, and today we're going to be looking at Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 is the top to bottom remake of the classic survival horror first released on PlayStation in 1998 that helped make me a lifelong fangirl of the Resident Evil series and horror games in general. Players once again step into the shoes of Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield as they attempt to survive a zombie outbreak that has engulfed Raccoon City. This game is incredibly impressive. In fact, it's just as impressive as the original release 21 years ago. While it's impossible to say which one I categorically prefer, as they're both very different games released in very different eras, 2019's Resident Evil 2 is the absolute best we could have hoped for in a remake of such an iconic game. The game has been smartly modernised in every way, keeping the very basics of the story, characters, setting, and monsters, although all four of these things have been changed for the better, but radically altering the gameplay, mood, atmosphere, and challenges to create something that will be just familiar enough to fans, whilst also feeling completely fresh and new. The biggest change, besides the incredible new graphics, has been to the gameplay. Gone are the static cameras and directional-based controls, replaced by a third-person, over-the-shoulder perspective akin to Resident Evil 4. Instead of going in an action-heavy direction as that game did, however, Resident Evil 2 triples down on its horror roots, making for a game that's scary and intense, dripping with horror, and making sure you never quite feel safe as you fumble around in the dark, desperately searching for supplies. This is in huge parts thanks to the various monsters you'll encounter, all of whom are dangerous and ready to rip you apart at the slightest lapse in concentration. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the Tyrant, dubbed by fans as Mr. X. I very rarely use the word masterclass, holding it in reserve for truly special moments or ideas in gaming, but that's exactly what Mr. X is. A masterclass in design and a fantastic example of how Resident Evil 2 has evolved from its 1998 roots to what I'm sure will go down as one of the absolute best games of 2019. Promoted from occasional boss encounter in the B scenarios of the original release to relentless stalker in this game, Mr. X makes a sudden, memorable appearance in Resident Evil 2, proceeding to persistently pursue you across the game for a time. His emergence is abrupt, throwing you into a panic that never quite goes away as he stalks you through the RPD. And it's not just Mr. X who's more terrifying this time around. Zombies are more dangerous, licker encounters take on a whole new dimension of terror, and later enemies will test your nerve and resolve completely. Playing into this is the impeccably designed map. Back when I was a blogger, I wrote a long essay about how open world games could learn a thing or two from Resident Evil's maps, and Resident Evil 2's map might just be the best one yet. It's interlinked phenomenally well, and slowly exploring and unlocking it is immensely satisfying. Plus, it's a really great fusion of old and new. There are areas or rooms that will feel familiar to anyone who exhaustively explored the old police station, as well as a whole array of new areas, including an entirely expanded third floor, and an impressive suite of hidden secrets and unlockables to find. Most of which yield precious resources such as ammo, healing items, expanded inventory space, and more. Resident Evil 2 perfectly walks the line between giving you enough to get by on, whilst making you feel like you're constantly surviving by the skin of your teeth. You'll always have just enough bullets and health to overcome the next challenge, and will always be overcome with relief to find some ammo or a first aid spray. It's something a lot of games don't succeed at, but which Resident Evil 2 utterly nails. The slick gameplay helps. I'm a massive fangirl of the classic Resident Evils, but even I have to admit, the old tank controls were a bother and probably more dangerous to your survival than most of the game's enemies. By making the switch to the over-the-shoulder perspective, Resident Evil 2 puts you in complete control and feels so effortless to play in a way classic games in the series just didn't. Movement and shooting are both incredibly satisfying, and by ratcheting up the danger levels of its monsters, the game has its cake and eats it too, focusing the threat purely on how threatening the enemies are, as opposed to how awkward the controls are. The remix story works a hell of a lot better this time around too. The characters are pretty much how you remember them. Claire is looking for her brother, Leon is having the worst first day ever, etc, etc. But their arcs have been redone to work a lot better in the remake. Chief Irons, for example, has the same basic storyline, but its implementation is vastly improved. On the flip side, Annette Birkin has the same basic motivations, but her story arc is reworked. Plus, Marvin is featured a bit more, so you can actually give a crap about him this time around. Resident Evil 2 is everything I dared to let myself hope it would be, and then some. After its reveal at E3 last year, I was beyond hyped by what I saw, but the game has somehow managed to completely surpass even my lofty expectations. From the gameplay to the graphics, audio, controls, enemy design, and everything else, Resident Evil 2 is a marked improvement on its 1998 predecessor in every conceivable way. It's a poster child for how to remake a classic game in a modern era, and is itself a modern classic. Make no mistake about it, this will be counted as one of the best games of 2019, and quite possibly one of the best games of this generation. Thank you very much for watching this video, guys. If you've enjoyed it, please keep it here at Words About Games. We've got tons of content, including our weekly podcast, more impressions videos, patch notes, and our weekly indie game of the week. We also stream over on Twitch at twitch.tv/wordsaboutgames every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. And most importantly, have a great day.